Okay folks, let's talk about interest rates. Sounds boring, right? But trust me, it's more interesting than you think, like something only your banker really understands. But it's actually quite simple once you break it down. But hold on, these things actually affect all of us, whether we realize it or not. From the coffee you buy to the house you live in, interest rates play a role. Think of it like this: you need to borrow money, maybe for a flat, maybe for that new nasi lemak stall you've been dreaming of, or perhaps to start a new business venture. Now nobody's gonna just give you free money, right? There's always a catch. So, you go to a bank and they say, sure, we'll lend you the cash, but you gotta pay us back a little extra. This extra is what we call interest. That little extra is the interest rate. It's the cost of borrowing money. It's basically the price you pay for borrowing money, just like you pay rent for living in a flat, like renting a flat, but for cash. And just like rent, interest rates can vary. And just like rent, interest rates can go up or down depending on a whole bunch of factors. These factors can include the economy, inflation, and even government policies. But here's the kicker: it works both ways. You can also earn interest. If you put money in a bank account, like saving up for that trip to Bali, the bank pays you interest. The bank is essentially borrowing your money and giving you a little something for the trouble. This is how savings accounts work. They're basically borrowing your money and giving you a little something for the trouble. It's a win-win situation. See, interest rates aren't just some abstract financial jargon, they're a part of our daily financial lives. They're part of our everyday lives, whether we're taking out loans or trying to grow our savings. Understanding them can help you make better financial decisions. So next time you hear those two little words, don't tune out. Pay attention and see how they impact your finances. It's time to understand how this whole interest rate thing really works. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your money. Alright, so we know interest rates exist, but who decides what they should be? Enter the central banks. These institutions are the backbone of our financial system, making crucial decisions that affect the entire economy. Think of them as the referees of the financial system. Just like in sports, they make the calls that keep the game fair and balanced. In Singapore, we have the Monetary Authority of Singapore, or MAS. They are responsible for ensuring that the financial system remains robust and resilient. In America, they have the Federal Reserve, which sounds way more impressive, but let's be real, they probably don't even serve Tatarik in their meetings. Still, their role is pivotal in shaping the US economy. Anyway, central banks don't just sit around counting money all day, although that would be a pretty sweet gig. They are constantly analyzing data and making decisions that impact millions of lives. They have a super important job keeping the economy stable. This involves monitoring inflation, employment rates, and overall economic growth. And one way they do this is by setting a benchmark interest rate. This rate influences the cost of borrowing and the return on savings. This benchmark rate is like the starting point for all other interest rates in the economy. It serves as a guide for banks and financial institutions. It's the rate at which commercial banks can borrow money from the central bank. This in turn affects the rates they offer to their customers. And guess what? This rate trickles down and affects the rates that you and I get on our loans and savings accounts. So, the decisions made by central banks have a direct impact on our daily lives. So, yeah, central banks have a lot of power. They are the gatekeepers of economic stability and growth. They're like the puppet masters of the financial world, pulling the strings on interest rates to try and keep everything running smoothly. Their decisions can make or break economies. But hey, nobody ever said managing an economy was easy, right? It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it, and central banks are up to the task. Central banks know best. Now you might be thinking, why bother setting interest rates at all? Can't we just let the market decide? Well, it's not quite that simple. See, central banks have this tricky balancing act to perform. On one hand, they want to encourage people to spend money and businesses to invest. This helps the economy grow, creates jobs, and keeps those GDP numbers looking good. But here's the catch. If everyone's spending like there's no tomorrow, prices start going up. That's called inflation, and it can really mess things up. Remember the great chili potty shortage of '23? Yeah, inflation can be a real pain. So, central banks use interest rates to try and find that sweet spot. A Goldilocks economy, if you will, where things are growing at a healthy pace but inflation isn't spiraling out of control. It's a delicate dance, my friends, and it requires careful monitoring and adjustment. Okay, Let's say the economy is feeling a little sluggish, like when you've had too much to eat and just want a nap. Businesses are closing, people are losing their jobs, and even the copy uncle looks worried. It's a tough time for everyone. Time for central banks to put on their superhero capes and slash those interest rates. They step in to save the day. Low interest rates are like a big sale at your favorite store, but for money. Imagine everything is suddenly on discount. Suddenly borrowing becomes way cheaper. People start thinking about all the things they can now afford. Think about it. Taking out a loan for that new flat doesn't seem so daunting when interest rates are low. Businesses get excited too. They see opportunities everywhere. They can borrow money at lower rates to invest in new equipment, hire more workers, or finally open that bubble tea shop they've been talking about. Expansion becomes a real possibility. All this spending helps boost the economy and hopefully gets things moving in the right direction. But wait, there's more. The ripple effect is huge. Low interest rates also mean you get paid less for saving your money. Your savings account isn't as attractive anymore. Your trusty fixed deposit account might not seem so appealing when the returns are lower than the price of a plate of chicken rice. It's a tough choice. This encourages people to spend rather than save, which further stimulates the economy. More spending means more business, and the cycle continues. Section 5, high interest rates, savers rejoice. But not so fast. But what happens when the economy starts overheating? Everyone's got a job, businesses are booming, and people are throwing money around like confetti at a National Day parade. That's when central banks step in and raise interest rates. Higher interest rates are like a wet blanket on a bonfire. They make borrowing more expensive, which cools down all that frenzied spending. Suddenly, taking out a loan for a new car or that fancy new smartphone doesn't seem like such a good idea. On the flip side, higher interest rates are music to the ears of savers. Finally, their hard-earned money is earning them some decent returns. This encourages people to park their cash in savings accounts and bonds, effectively taking money out of circulation and helping to curb inflation. However, higher interest rates can also slow down economic growth. Businesses might think twice about expanding if borrowing costs are too high, and consumers might tighten their belts, leading to lower spending and potentially even job losses. Section 6. The inflation connection, interest rates to the rescue. Remember inflation, that pesky beast that makes everything more expensive? Well, interest rates are one of the main weapons central banks use to fight it. When inflation is high, central banks often raise interest rates. This makes borrowing more expensive, which can help to cool down the economy and bring inflation back under control. Think of it like turning down the heat on a stove when the pot starts boiling over. On the other hand, if inflation is low and the economy needs a little boost, central banks might lower interest rates. This makes borrowing cheaper, encouraging spending and investment, which can help to push inflation back up to a healthy level. But here's the thing, managing inflation with interest rates is a bit like trying to hit a moving target while riding a roller coaster. It's a delicate balancing act, and central banks have to be very careful not to oversteer or undershoot. Section 7, interest rates and you, why should I even care? So we've talked about central banks, inflation and the economy, but how do interest rates actually affect you and me? Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because interest rates are everywhere. First off, if you're thinking about buying a house or a car, interest rates are going to play a big role in how much you end up paying. Lower interest rates mean lower monthly payments, which could be the difference between owning your dream home and settling for a shoebox apartment. But it's not just big-ticket items. Interest rates also affect the cost of credit card debt, student loans, and even personal loans. So, whether you're a seasoned investor or just trying to make ends meet, understanding interest rates can help you make smarter financial decisions. And hey, even if you're not planning on buying anything big anytime soon, remember that interest rates also affect the returns on your savings. So, paying attention to interest rate trends can help you make the most of your hard-earned money. Section 8. Interest rates in the real world. A balancing act. Now I know what you're thinking, this whole interest rate thing sounds complicated. And you're not wrong, setting interest rates is a delicate balancing act. Central banks have to weigh a whole bunch of factors like inflation, economic growth, unemployment, and even global events, before they make a move. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. And to make things even more fun, there's no guarantee that central banks will always get it right. Sometimes they raise rates too high, choking off economic growth. Other times they lower rates too much, leading to inflation. It's a tough job, but hey, somebody's got to do it. The important thing to remember is that interest rates are a powerful tool that can be used to influence the economy. And while we might not always agree with the decisions central banks make, understanding how interest rates work can help us make better sense of the financial world around us. Section 9, wrapping up, interest rates, more than just numbers. So there you have it, folks. Interest rates. They're not just some boring financial jargon, they're a fundamental part of our economy, influencing everything from the cost of borrowing to the returns on our savings. Understanding how interest rates work can empower us to make smarter financial decisions, whether we're buying a house, investing our money, or just trying to understand the news. So, the next time you hear those two little words, don't change the channel. Pay attention, ask questions, and remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your money. And that's our show for tonight. Tune in next time when we'll be discussing the fascinating world of tax audits. Just kidding, we'd never do that to you. Or would we?